Okay, so today we have another battle video, but this time around we are taking a look at brothers of the same family. We will be looking at the all-new Apple M1 iPad Pro 11 inches versus the 12.9 inches M1 iPad Pro, or the mini LED iPad Pro. Which one should you go for, or should you even consider going for either one of these two? Let's go ahead and talk about it. All right, so what I'm going to be doing here is put a major focus on what's different, at least what I consider to be the main differences between these two tablets, because they both share so many, similarities that it's just better to highlight what sticks out and what is different. And with that, I want to start off with the big boy here, the mini LED model of the iPad Pro. And that, in fact, is actually one of the key differences that exist between the big one and the small one, the 11 inches one. The display type. Apple calls it the Liquid Retina XDR and defines it as a mini LED backlit multi-touch display with IPS technology. Essentially, you have an LCD display here that is powered by 10,000 mini LED, thus the name iPad Pro Mini LED. It is pushing a resolution of 2732 by 2048 and a 1,000,000:1 contrast ratio. It is very bright with peak brightness nearing up to 1600 nits with HDR content. That is extremely bright. Then you have the max brightness at 600 nits and max full screen brightness at 1000 nits. Image quality here is excellent. So you have colors that are very, very well pronounced. So you have reds that are very, very red, blacks that are really, really black, a little like it is the case with the typical OLED display. It's great for entertainment, gaming, day-to-day tasks, and all of that good stuff. On the other hand, you have the 11 inches M1 iPad Pro with the quote-unquote Liquid Retina display, which is essentially the same display you would find on last year's 11 inches. Although it is not mini LED powered, it is still a very nice display. It is pushing 2388 by 1668 for the resolution, and it gets really, really bright also. Not 1600 nits bright on HDR content, but still you are looking at 600 nits max brightness on regular content. So fantastic even under direct sunlight. So if you are in the market for one of these, you should already start asking yourself a few questions, right? So starting off with, how much HDR content do you consume daily, right, for you to be able to consider buying a mini LED iPad Pro? Or are you a visual arts professional who actually needs, the mini LED, the 10,000 mini LED powering that LCD screen? So these are just a few things that you should start, thinking about. And by the way, if this is your first time visiting, well, welcome to the channel, of course. If you do like the content so far, truly appreciate that. Please do me a huge favor. Hit both the like and the subscribe button there. It's a tremendous boost to this channel. It truly helps me show the algorithm that people actually enjoyed videos like this one. Again, I very much appreciate that. Now let's go ahead and get back to these differences here. The next main difference between the two is the size, and that one actually is the most obvious one. Maybe I should have started with that. The M1 11 inches iPad Pro, as the name suggests, is boasting an 11 inches display, whereas the mini LED pushes a 12.9 display. And let me tell you, that thing is gigantic. So much so that it's one thing that almost turns me off about this tablet. This is actually linked to the difference in display I mentioned earlier. I talked about the difference in the type of display between the two, but we also have to add the difference in size on that same display, because obviously this is a larger display versus the 11 inches. So you truly have to figure out what you are looking for on a tablet when it comes down to size, because again, the size difference between the 11 inches and the 12.9 inches is palpable. So again, make sure to choose the right size, because if you don't like large tablets and you want something that is very portable, stay the heck away from this 12.9 inches. On the other hand, if you're looking for more screen real estate, right? Let's say you work on large projects like video editing. I may have mentioned that already. Video editing, the large one is definitely good for that stuff. So for my visual art professionals out there who actually need that much screen real estate in order to increase your productivity, go for the mini LED one. There is of course a number of other variables to consider before investing into something like this, and you should make sure to consider and keep in mind that beyond just that size and how large the 12.9 inches is compared to the 11 inches one, the mini LED is also thicker and also weighs more than the 11 inches. But on the other hand, the larger one actually offers a more comfortable typing experience, right? So a more enjoyable typing experience. So these are a few of the things that you have to think about. Everything that I've listed, make sure to think about those when considering buying either one of these two tablets. Now, both of them share a ton of similarities, like I said at the beginning there. Apple ProMotion's technology, and on something that's large as the iPad Pro 12.9 inches, you absolutely need something like that in order to enhance your user experience. They both have support for 5G, a USB Type-C port with support for Thunderbolt, the same internal storage levels, support for the Apple Pencil 2nd generation, quad speaker setup. And I want to stop here and quickly highlight something. The quad speaker setup found on the 12.9 inches gets really loud. Definitely louder than those found on the 11 inches one. Now, I'm not saying that the ones found on 11 inches don't sound good. They sound really good, but these sound good and are louder. So if audio volume is something that you hold that you hold dear, then you should definitely go for the mini LED one. They also are each loaded with Apple's latest and most powerful chip. The M1 chipset found on these two is the same one you will find on MacBooks, and they're also available in either 8 gigs or 12 gigs of RAM with 8-core CPU and 8-core GPU. So performance should be fairly similar with some very slight but negligible differences. And of course, with that being said, those tiny differences would be to the advantage of the 12.9 inches because it's a larger tablet, right? And I'm thinking more in terms of the larger the computer, the better it is at, cooling down the whole system and avoiding, throttling and keeping that performance as optimal as it can. And I think the 12.9 inches is better suited for that. But then again, just very, very slight differences, not necessarily noticeable to the naked eye. Now, the next main difference I want to highlight here is the price. The 12.9 inches mini LED iPad Pro will run you about $1,100 or $1,000 if you're a student for the base storage model, whereas the 11 inches will run you roughly $800 for the base storage or $700 for the base storage if you are a student. Now I'm going to stop the video here and say that in my opinion, you should consider neither one of these if you really want an iPad Pro, unless you're really chasing after that M1 chipset. But the iPad Pro from last year is crazy powerful. So that's something that I would suggest. If you want a large iPad Pro, you should go for the 12.9 inches from last year. If you want the 11 inches, you should go for the 11 inches from last year. You get a ton of power out of those too. And of course, again, that is just my opinion. This video actually was just meant for me to highlight some of the main differences for you to consider if you were thinking about buying either one of these two. So just highlighting the main differences that you have to consider, to help make that decision for you. And I'm really hoping that this was informative. And if it was, of course, please don't forget to like, comment, share, subscribe if you haven't subscribed yet. And I'll catch you in the comment section. I'm also going to catch you in the next video. And up until then, make sure to stay safe out there.